dreams to filter through this land of ours and fill a sportsman's dreams. Enjoy what nature holds for us, her bounty never ends. Getting back to basics with the practical sportsman. It's always an adventure, no matter where we go. From a favorite hunting spot to the hottest fishing hole. Outdoor life we all can share with family and friends. We'll do it all together with a practical sportsman. We'll do it all together with a practical sportsman.
Hi there, come on in. It's Thursday night, November 14th, the year 2002. We are on the eve of Michigan's firearm deer season. What do we have in store tonight, Zach?
Well, we got the history of Michigan's deer hunting regulations.
I'm going to talk about problems with the antler restrictions.
Of course, we've got that Fish and Game Hall of Fame this week from Missaukee County.
Got a trophy tale of a father and son who both got deer. Which one do you think is the best buck?
All this and more, so stay tuned. I'm Zachary Trost.
And I'm Fred Trost.
And you're watching The Practical Sportsman.
Oh, he's got the better story for sure.
We probably got in our stands, and probably 30 minutes this came in.
November 15th. That's, as most of you know, the opening of Michigan firearm deer season. But it hasn't always been that way. Actually, at one time, there wasn't even a deer season at all. And in a recent article in the Michigan Outdoor News, Steve Griffin tells us the history of Michigan's firearm deer season. In the 1800s, deer hunting was a free-for-all. There was no season, no limits, no rules. Common hunting methods included shining at night, tracking them with dogs, and even shooting deer when they were in the water. Venison was the meat of choice at lumber camps, and thousands of deer were shipped out of state to commercial markets. 1859 began a new era, though. That's when Michigan instituted its first season. It was 7 months long, but there were no limits. By 1870, the herd was way down and deer were hard to find. So in 1881, the legislature restricted the commercial sale of deer to out-of-state markets. They also shortened the deer season to 5 months and finally restricted the kind of deer that could be taken, anything but spotted fawns. And the legislature outlawed the use of pits, pitfalls, and traps for deer. Then in 1887, hunting deer with dogs and shooting deer at night under lights was banned. This was also the year that Michigan's first game warden was hired. 1895 was a monumental year for deer regulations. The first year a deer hunting license was required. The season was also shortened from 5 months down to 25 days, from November 1st to the 25th, and a limit of 5 deer was established. 6 years later, 1901, the limit was dropped to 3 per year. And then in 1905, the legislature cut that back to 2 deer per year. In 1915, the limit was cut to 1 deer, and in 1921, the legislature said that deer had to be an antlered buck. Then in 1925, the season was shortened just to 2 weeks. And now, 77 years later, firearm deer season is still those same dates, November 15th through the 30th. As the deer population bounced back, an experimental hunt for does was tried in Allegan County in 1941. And because the population still increased with lots of winter mortality, in 1952, the Conservation Department held the first major hunt for antlerless deer. The hunt was the land north of M20, no permit was required, and hunters took nearly 100,000 does out of the herd. That caused quite a fuss among hunters who grew up with the idea that only bucks should be taken. But during the past 50 years, the changes continued. As the human population exploded in southern lower Michigan, so did the deer herd. Statewide, the DNR reported that in the 1990s we had 2 million deer. That's an incredible number and one which many hunters doubt. Car deer accidents jumped to close to 70,000 per year. Doe hunting gradually became accepted. Bow hunting was given a 3-month season. And there have been lots of arguments over baiting, crop damage, and trophy hunting. But for all the changes, one tradition remains. That's November 15th through the 30th, Michigan's firearm deer season, which was established back in 1925. This all can be found in Steve Griffin's article in the Michigan Outdoor News. It's interesting campfire talk this deer season.
The evolution of the history of deer rules, well, I tell you what, they are still evolving today. Now, back years ago, the big thing was to balance the deer herd with the available food supply to prevent winter starvation. Well, then the DNR went through a phase where they were promoting supplemental feeding in order to carry extra deer over the winter so hunters would have more deer to hunt. Nowadays, the trend seems to be the bigger is better syndrome. I mean, we're not talking bigger deer with more meat or a higher quality of meat. We're talking about antlers. Big antlers is the end-all and be-all of hunting. Personally, I get a kick out of seeing big antlers, and I love watching big buck night, but it's hardly the reason for hunting, at least in my book. You know, traditionally, trophy hunting was optional. It wasn't mandatory. Most people hunted for meat, and I'm for preserving that traditional value. But politically, I tell you, the trophy deer people have literally taken deer management by the horns. One of the early trophy deer management organizations is one called Whitetails Unlimited, and in their fall 2002 magazine, you can buy signs for your property that reflect your deer management values. I mean, you can get a deer for traditional deer management, or trophy deer management, or quality deer management, which is currently trying to set mandatory point minimums for hunters in Michigan. That's a management method that has caused a lot of controversy. And in this fall issue, they have a special section that was written by a retired DNR wildlife biologist from Wisconsin. He takes a closer look at the traditional deer management, and what's really interesting is this section on antler restrictions. He says, monster buck mania tempts folks to try almost anything to get ahead in the record books. Self-interest often causes these folks to overlook the consequences of changing harvest strategies, like reducing hunting opportunity or mandating antler restrictions that bring with them undesirable baggage. Now, what kind of undesirable baggage is he talking about that come with antler restrictions? Here's what deer biologist Keith McCaffrey says. All western states have tried antler restrictions in an effort to increase the number of mature male mule deer and bull elk. All have now discontinued them as statewide rules for two primary reasons. First, antler restrictions focused mortality so heavily on mature animals that they were virtually extirpated, which means, of course, that when they focus on the mature animals, they're knocked out of the herd. So hardly anybody could find the big bucks that they were really looking for. He goes on to say better age structures were found where harvests were spread across all age and antler classes. Secondly, states experienced an unacceptable level of accidental illegal kill of animals with the wrong antler condition. In other words, spikes were regularly shot in Wisconsin prior to 1956 when only forked bucks were legal. Now, a third problem with antler restrictions is that there is no easy way to define an antler condition that will protect most young bucks without the best antlered yearling still being harvested. Point restrictions tend to protect only the smallest antlered deer. And a fourth problem with mandated antler restrictions is, what type of fine should be imposed on, say, a 14-year-old that shoots a deer of sublegal condition? And finally, the age structure resulting from antler restrictions is far from natural, if that is a goal. This would be especially true in heavily hunted states like Wisconsin, and goes without saying that Michigan is in that same category. To produce a natural sex and age structure in any deer herd, one should, quote, open the hunting season within 2 weeks of the peak fawning and then shoot 40 to 80% of the current year's fawns. That's how nature did it. That's according to the late Dr. Tony Bobenik, who's a known, famed deer biologist. Now, while that technique would be biologically sound, few of us would be enthused with this type of hunt. Now, keep in mind that what you just heard and saw on the screen wasn't my opinion. It was written by deer biologist Keith McCaffrey, who spent his entire career working on Wisconsin's deer herd, which is, for all practical purposes, just like Michigan's. And he concludes his article by saying this: "Large antlers fascinate us all, but they must be kept in perspective. The general public strongly supports hunting for the purpose of meat and managing herds. We must be cautious that our collective focus does not drift far from these motivations, as anything else is likely to be viewed by non-hunters as an ego trip and as frivolous use of wildlife." All I can say to that is amen. In December, I'll be having my 21st annual Big Buck Night, but please keep it in perspective. I mean, big bucks are unusual, and we just like to see how big those babies can grow. But these antlers are not the most important thing about deer or about deer hunting. The traditional value, which we're trying to promote here with the Practical Sportsman Foundation, is dedicated to perpetuating the idea that hunting is first and foremost a food gathering activity. Now, hopefully after Big Buck Night this year in December, we'll bring back the Wild Game Cooking Contest in March. That's what hunting, in my opinion, is really all about. Now this is a father-son team, Keith and Andy Solomon from Waterford. They were hunting Livingston County, and of course the big buck on the bottom, the 11-point, 18-inch spread. That was Father Keith's buck. But Andy he's got to have the better story.
Oh, he's got the better story for sure.
I mean, this is a buck of a lifetime you're holding.
Yeah, but you know, the thing that I respect about Andy is he could have hunted since he was 12 with a bow, and he just didn't feel that he was accurate enough with the bow. So he waited, and this was the first year he decided, hey, Dad, I'm going to go out and do it. Now I know I can.
Awesome. Andy, what's the scoop?
Well, me and my dad, we went out hunting, and we probably got in our stands, and probably 30 minutes this came in, and it was standing there, and I drew back on it and shot it, and I mean, it turned its head right when I shot, and I shot it through the neck and right through both shoulders, and it went right through the heart.
Wow. Sounds like you kind of did an autopsy on this.
Yep, and I dropped it right there on the scrape.
That is great. But you didn't want to hunt before this because you thought you weren't accurate enough?
Yeah.
What pound of bow do you pull?
Probably 55.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yep.
Pretty darn good. Now your hat though says gone fishing.
Yeah, I like to fish.
You like to fish better than to hunt, or what?
Well, in the summer I like to fish, and in the fall I like to hunt.
Well, that's logical. Well, good man. We'll see you here sometime with a big fish, eh?
Yep, I hope so.
Andy Solomon from Waterford and Keith, the dad, with the big one, but big deal.
Hey,
Hey,
that was
this
the
is
best.
this is a big deal right here.
If he could have done it all, that would have been great, you know.
Yeah.
If that would have been even a little button buck, whatever it was, a deer's a deer, you know, and that was fabulous.
Way to
Just a
go.
blessing.
Yes, indeed. Way to go, Solomon. Not brothers, but sort of.
We're tied.
The Solomon team. Way to go. If you're driving down a certain logging road in the UP the third week in November, you'll drive by a deer camp where each guy in camp has a nickname. Whoa! That's Meat. The nickname Meat reflects his hunting skill. So your name is?
Dave Huey,
From?
Midland.
Oh. You talk like a Yooper.
Well, you get that when you hang around these Zoopers up here after a while, eh? You spend the week up here with them, and you start talking like them, you know.
Yeah.
And so
So what do we have here? You got your four-wheeler.
that
You got,
belongs to Virgil.
what was in here?
Well, that was our cooker. We brought salmon and walleye up, and we fried chickens in there the first couple nights.
Huh.
Deep fry them, and we bring French fries and stuff, you know. Because we was here a couple days early.
And this is the famous sauna?
This is a sauna here. This is just our storage shed. We make these two. We make these little buildings. My brother's got a jig for it. There's so we can
Oh.
keep clean.
Sauna in the trailer for two. And then this is the wood stove.
Hot water
Okay.
bucket.
That'll be nice.
See, when we're done with this door folds open here, and then we can fill the trailer up for storage. For hauling our stuff up here.
That's pretty neat. And the conduit, little area there, put your wood. Boy, you don't have much wood left, mate.
That's just enough for the sauna, just for the night.
And then you're leaving?
Yeah, we'll leave first thing in the morning. We'll start packing up. Takes us about 4 hours to break it down.
Oh, it looks like you have the facilities there.
Yeah, ain't that nice?
That is.
It all comes apart with about 4 or 6 screws.
Huh. And into the trailer it goes?
Yeah, I built a shed at home. We put all the stuff, the tent.
Well, that tent, that's an army tent, but it's covered with big tarp.
Right.
How come?
When you get heavy snow up here, the snow sticks to the tent. It will stick to the tent. So we bought that big tarp and put over top of it, and it keeps the tent dry so we don't have to set it up when we get home to dry it all out. Because all your rain and snow washes off to the side. And it insulated it keeps it quite, and helps keep it a lot warmer with that blue tarp on there.
That's home, home sweet home.
Yep.
Now, why is this place known as Trollville?
Because the Yoopers call us trolls. We're from down under, don't you know?
Ah.
So Toomey says we got to have a name, so he says, you guys are trolls, he says, so this should be Trollville. One of the first years we was up here, so had to make a sign. We got a sign stuck out there on the road. It says Trollville.
The sign is an advertisement of where the guys from this deer camp are from, but they've spent the first week of deer season here for many years. I know it doesn't look like much, but you don't judge a deer camp by how it looks, or by the number of beer kegs by the door, or by the outhouse, or even by the fact that it has a portable sauna, or by the size of the blue tarp that covers the army tent. And you cannot judge a deer camp by the number of bucks on the pole either, or the size of the bucks the hunters get. To my way of thinking, you judge a deer camp by the hunters who are there. Do they brag and play the macho role, or do they share what they have, like the hunters in Trollville share their deer to eat in camp? Deer camp really isn't about deer, at least in my opinion. If it was, the gang of hunters at Trollville would never come back. They only got 2 bucks last year. The attraction of Trollville isn't the deer, it's Trollville itself.
Make a little breezeway, you know. Because this gets all wet. And this has been the nicest year we've had up here forever, I think.
Weather-wise?
Yeah.
I noticed everybody wasted their time bringing snowshoes, though.
Well, I've been here before. I don't come without them.
Meet.
Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you. Get back across the bridge so you can blend in.
Yeah. Get back home so I can shave, you know. Ma, she'll be real impressed when I get home.
Yeah. Well, good. Trollville, the legend.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you exactly where Trollville is, other than it's somewhere in the Upper Peninsula. Because like many deer camps, Trollville is not a tourist destination. It's personal to the hunters who are a part of it.
This week, the Fish and Game Hall of Fame comes from Missaukee County. Missaukee County is west here of Houghton Lake, east of Cadillac. No big towns, the biggest being Lake City, which happens to be on the county's biggest lake, Lake Missaukee. We don't get a lot of hunting and fishing award entries for Missaukee County, so we had to dig back in our files a few years for some of these. That's our Fish and Game Hall of Fame from Missaukee County, an area with big bucks and big turkeys. For next week's featured county, it will be coming from Eaton.
Well, in less than 12 hours, we're going to be out in the woods. Zach, you and I, John Ford, Tim Farragon, we're going to be somewhere around Wexford, Missaukee counties.
That's right.
We have reporters who will be sending us reports from Tuscola County, Midland, up here in Crawford County, a couple in the Upper Peninsula. So next week's show is going to be different than we've ever done. We're going to have reporters all over the state.
It should be cool.
It should be. It should be a lot of fun. Now, Sunday night, if you get a big buck, especially if you're down in the southern part of the state, Dexter, come to the Buck Bowl there at Mill Creek Sport.
Yep, 7 o'clock Sunday.
Be there with your big buck. Zach and I will be there getting some stories for the show of the 28th. We won't have the buck polls on next week. We'll have them on the 28th, which is our Thanksgiving show. Also, if any of you out there have footage or get some footage at buck polls, which occur just during the first few days of deer season, send us the tape because we're going to have a buck poll report on the 28th. That should be an interesting show.
That's correct.
So you got a little time on that buck pole business. You got anything to tell the folks, Zach?
Just get outdoors and get your buck this weekend.
Or doe, or spike. It's a great place to be. See you next week. For the past decade, I've always stopped by the buck pole at Mill Creek Sports in Dexter the second or third evening of Michigan's firearm deer season. Originally, the draw was the huge deer that came from Washtenaw County. Well, now the Mill Creek Buck Pole has become the place to be if you got a big buck in southern Michigan. Another change in recent years is that deer hunting has become much more than just a man's sport.
Fred, don't pass up the gal.
Yeah, don't pass up the gals, Fred.
15-year-old or 15-point?
Thanks, Fred.
No, what?
15 point, 32
okay.
years old, 19 years in the hunt.
No kidding, that one right there?
This one right here.
Whoa.